Full disclosure, we're recording this. The episode we're about to play was recorded before the events we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and we didn't plan this. We didn't have this ahead of time scheduled in any kind of way to correlate with the events that happened this past week with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But we did actually come in on a weekend because we do intend to still release the episode, and it becomes a lot more relevant, I think. Charlie Kirk's format, you may not agree with his ideas, you may totally agree with his ideas. That is irrelevant. The fact is that he tried to have an open conversation with people with whom he often disagreed, and he provided a format that gave people the opportunity to have that discussion, and he listened. And mostly, I think he was pretty respectful in his responses. And again, you can choose to agree or disagree with the things that he said, but anybody that wants to shut down the conversation, anybody that wants to attack the individual instead of attacking the ideas is not helpful for culture, not helpful for society. And I think it goes very much against the premise of this podcast, the premise of what we're going to talk about in this episode. And I just felt like we needed to kind of front end load this episode with the sentiment that violence for political gain is never okay. And regardless of what side of the political aisle you stand on, you should be absolutely pissed off by what happened this past week. It's just never okay to shut down the conversation. It's never okay to attack another person in that way. And so we're going to release the episode. We don't mention Charlie Kirk in the episode, but I do believe that he was one of the ones that was a part of that intellectual dark web that we're going to talk about in the episode. And certainly one of the ones that was wanting to just have a fair conversation.
Yeah, and I think we make some pretty strong points in the episode about our version of this debate, which is called Summit, where we've had people that obviously clearly weren't this violent, but they stood up and puffed their chest, or they got loud or yelled at someone, or started talking directly to someone, and in kind of even a violent way. And that's just not tolerated at Summit, and absolutely should not be tolerated in this public space.
Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you guys for sticking with us on the podcast. If the tone doesn't match the tone of the week or just what's going on culturally, we apologize again. It was recorded about 2 weeks ago before all these events took place, but we're going to put it out there in defiant opposition of anybody that wants to shut down a good conversation.
Yeah. Any of your kids play musical instrument?
A little bit. They do piano lessons, and my daughter tried her hand at trumpet, but did not try very hard. So she's got a trumpet and then didn't show up to her trumpet class. So
I'm thinking back to elementary school, and then even bigger, a bigger option is in middle school. The kids have plenty of options to choose from for musical instruments. You mentioned trumpet. Piano isn't traditionally part of like the band, like the middle school band, but there's clarinet, there's tuba, and of course you want to think about having to carry these things around.
Oh, I know. Right? Who signs up for tuba?
Right. And then my kid, Vinny, does percussion, and he shows up with a stick bag. It's the biggest instrument.
And they're like, just go hit things.
Yeah. And you don't, they get a buy because you can't obviously walk around with a big, bass drum or whatever. But picture all these instruments, maybe even ran off some more flute, whatever else. And then
bassoon.
Right. And then if you go into like, I forget the stringed instruments, there's a whole other group of them once you get into high school and things like that. How many of these instruments do you hear on the radio?
Oof. So the genre that I listen to.
Exactly, yeah.
Guitar, bass guitar, drums, and then maybe if they happen to have a movie tie-in, they might have like an orchestra background.
Yeah. And, you know, your ska bands maybe had some trumpets, some brass, and things like that. But by and large, and now I'm thinking about my kids, the music they're listening to, you know, warms my heart when they're rocking out some Weezer or some Tool or something like that. But they're listening to their own music now, Olivia Rodrigo and all these other things. Again, I don't see string section. I don't see horns.
You probably don't even hear music. It's probably all AI at this point.
So I got curious when we decided Vincent wasn't going to sign up for band in high school. Where can he get that fun music? And that's when I stumbled upon, and I'll give a shout out to Lexington Music Education. They have a Jack Black School of Rock.
Nice.
So for several weeks, 12 weeks, something like that, they go in, there's a drum set, there's a bass, there's a guitar, and there's a vocal mic. And they learn rock songs.
And they come home after, you said 12 weeks. And they're like, Dad, do you want to hear the Lava Chicken song?
Let's go. No, luckily enough, they're actually picking real songs. And it, you know, Creep and Seven Nation Army, and then they're going to go play them live at Country Boy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then we'll invite you know, all of our friends to come see it. And the difference is, I don't know if you've ever been to a middle school band performance. It's great.
I have, and I feel like they need something on tap to help you survive it.
It would help. And now keep in mind, I am not dissing band. I think middle school band, high school band's great. It's excellent for learning music. They're a lot more challenging pieces. This is great. But when that's not for you, I mean, pick up a guitar, pick up a bass. Let's rock it out. Right?
Absolutely.
Oh.
You are listening to The Soapbox. I'm Paul.
And I'm Eric.
This all started out with a list. What's that all about?
So I've compiled a list over the years of things that just bother me, things that grind my gears. And I shared that list with you.
And I thought, you know what? That would make interesting conversation. Sometimes I'm going to want to agree with you, and it's just going to be something we talk about. Other times, though, I'm going to want to steel man the opposite position because I think that's just interesting conversation.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I'm always right, but Paul's just a really good debater.
Hey. A couple years ago, I received an invitation to something that kind of freaked me out. And you know where we're going with this already, but for the folks that are listening, I am a Christian, and I generally assemble with like-minded folks to discuss our worldview. And you have been for a long time hosting an event which you have called Summit.
Yep. And we've mentioned a few times on the show, but haven't really spelled it out.
Haven't gotten into it. And the sales pitch was, let's sit around and let's discuss theology, maybe politics, science, important cultural things. And it's sort of a forum for debate.
Yep.
But, you know, when you're the token Christian in the group, can I lay claim to that?
We call
title?
you token. No, we don't.
They might. You kind of feel like you're walking into like, okay, are they going to do like a goat sacrifice, or is it going to be a human sacrifice? Like all these people meeting to talk about things that aren't Jesus. Like what's going on? But I have to say, it is probably one of the best forms of discussion that I've ever participated in. And I guess we should unpack it a little bit, since we've sort of alluded to what it is a few times. And really, it was the genesis of this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Because the same sort of thing happens in that format, but everybody gets to participate, and it's a much longer form. Mm-hmm. You can bring your own ideas to the table instead of it being a little bit more prescripted. And then, of course, it helps that there's also snacks and bourbon if that's your jam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had to look because I didn't remember, but August 8th, 2015 was the first event we did. Most everyone has been at my house, and I think we originally called it the Religion Summit.
Oh, okay. This would have been before my time.
This was, and you said a few years ago. I'm pretty sure you came to Summit pre-COVID, so it's been.
I've been doing the Summit thing for a while.
Yeah, So
I'm hit or miss. I'm intermittent. I'm a
Yeah.
bad friend who doesn't commit to things, but I do absolutely enjoy it. And COVID actually was a transformative time for Summit.
yeah.
So we can maybe
Yeah.
kind of get into the timeline of that. But it started with you and Chad White.
Yeah, yeah. I think he and I are the ones, the two that cooked up the idea. And I think it was born a little bit out of my wanting to come out of the closet, so to speak, with atheism, right?
Oh, with atheism.
Yeah. Surprise you there. It's a big closet. Wait. So yeah, it was 10 years ago, 2015. I wasn't as outspokenly atheist as I am now. It's getting there.
Let's go down that rabbit trail for a moment if we can. Deep into the rabbit hole.
Right.
And along other rabbit modes of transportation and habitation.
Yes.
Why did you feel that way? Why did you feel like you didn't have the ability to just represent your beliefs and your worldview?
I think a lot of it had to do with kind of the social pressure. I mean, I still to this day, and we did a whole episode on agnostic versus atheist. People are afraid to call themselves atheist, even if they, when you ask them, or give them the definition, they say, yeah, that's me.
And the distinction for folks that didn't listen to that episode is just a claim to have knowledge, right?
Yeah. Gnosticism is about knowledge. Do you know if there's a God? Yes or no? And then theism is about belief. Do you believe in a God? Do you not believe in a God? So people just have a hard time. I've noticed just expressing it. I call it the A word, right? I mean, they don't want to say it out loud. And I think maybe like 2015, I probably didn't have atheist on my Facebook profile, where you could go through and pick, your political views and all that. I was not hiding it, but I wasn't as outspoken as some of my friends that very much were.
Yeah. Which honestly, I think maybe speaks a little bit towards just the fact that you have a more of a centrist bent when it comes to disagreeing with other people. It's not so much the belief system that you hold as much as it is what it represents in culture when you say it out loud.
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit of a defiant thing in the Bible Belt to reject some of the things that people, the default assumption, the belief system that they tend to hold.
Yeah.
And so I can see how that could feel punitive if they say at a lunch, that's a work lunch, all right, everybody, let's bow our heads and let's say a prayer. Yeah. And you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I'm often the guy, and again, this is something that I've kind of grown into. Wasn't as brave of doing this, years ago, but as of late, I'm the guy looking up around the room to see who else isn't bowing their head.
Oh, so this is like a secret club.
There's a secret club.
So there's a secret club in the room bowing their heads, and a second secret club they're aware of both.
Yeah, and then you're nodding your heads, and you're kind of, and some people I know aren't participating, but others surprise me too. At conferences, I'll look around the room and go, okay, yeah, that person. And I think now maybe, and this is awful, but now it's a political statement, right?
It tends to be,
yeah, and it shouldn't be. I mean, belief and political leaning shouldn't be, necessarily aligned. But I kind of feel like there's a need to.
We could probably make that a whole episode because I do feel like if you are an evangelical or a certain breed of Christian, then you would have to align yourself with Republicans. If you tend to be like more like Catholic or something like that, you probably would be Democrat.
Yeah.
I'd want to read up on that a little bit more before I wanted to unpack it. But I do see the alliances forming there for sure.
I'd say certainly with like the Unitarian churches and some of the ones that are a little more progressive and free, those ones probably align left more than.
For sure. Yeah. Because Unitarians, they believe all paths lead to the same destination, which is, going to be kind of the ultimate statement of inclusion. It does happen to ignore most core, tenets of the Bible.
Okay, yeah.
So if you're Unitarian, let me call you out. You can argue with me in the comment section, but you're wrong.
Or you could come to Summit. So 10 years ago, and Chad was kind of the co-founder of it, so to speak. I'm the planner guy. I put the Evites together and I do all that. But he certainly helped with topics and getting conversation going, because it was tricky at first. We literally started with pen and paper. I would put that around the table. We did it on the back deck, the first one, and everyone had notes, and everybody was nervous. It was weird. We didn't record it or anything like that, but we didn't really know how it was going to go. And this was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. So preceding this, let's wind back the time machine even a little bit more. Where did this idea come from?
That is very specifically a YouTube video of the Four Horsemen, which is, I guess, still
Daniel
Dennett, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens. And so the four of them sat down, I think, in Daniel Dennett's apartment in New York. No, Hitch's apartment in New York. I think he had already passed by then, 2015. I think he'd already passed.
Okay. So this was maybe like in memory of somebody that shared like theology or like worldviews.
I think what it was is I was getting on I was a big Dawkins guy for a while, and I was big into reading these famous atheist books that came out kind of all around the same time period. And then the four of them who all wrote books on these topics got together.
Yeah, because this was like, I think there were two things culturally happening at the same time, right? You had the new atheism movement, which was, the Four Horsemen is kind of actually it's biblical, right? It comes from Revelation. And so they're trying to usher in the apocalypse of Christianity.
Yep.
And actually, again, that could be a whole episode too, because that had cultural ramifications that were unintended. And Dawkins has since expressed remorse for his hand in making things worse rather than making them better in a lot of ways. But that was also happening at the same time as this other thing called the intellectual dark web.
Yes, indeed. And they were all attached to that.
That was what appealed to me, because the intellectual dark web, you could be a Christian, you could be an atheist, you could have other worldviews. It was less about trying to defend your individual position intellectually, and it was more about having an honest conversation where you were simultaneously willing to listen to your opposition and make concessions when they made a good point, but then you were also given that same grace.
Yeah, and steel manning was an important component of this, where as opposed to the straw man argument, where I recite what I heard you say and I do it in a flimsy way.
Yeah, so that's the straw man.
That's the straw man. So, and the term steel man I heard coming out of this intellectual dark web, which included Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and all these guys.
Oh yeah.
There's another piece to the puzzle is YouTube.
Yes.
The video technology is getting better. It was easier to post. You think 2005, 10 years before that, I mean, webcams, and I mean, this was a harder feat.
Yeah. So if you wanted to go back to 2005, the standard setup would have been a mini DV camcorder. Mm-hmm. So it was a digital recording, but still to tape. And then you'd have to capture that in real time with FireWire.
Yeah.
And then your editing process was super slow. Yeah. So if you wanted to produce something that had cuts and effects and graphics, you were easily looking at like 10 to 40 hours for a 5-minute video.
Get on our link tree and check out some of the other stuff we've done, and look at the Arizona Bay Tool tribute videos.
Oh, yeah.
And then compare them to the Lost Dogs videos that you recorded. I mean, that was probably just 20 years difference.
Night and day difference. Yeah. Absolutely.
But so I watched this video. I was reading these books. I was wanting to talk to people about it, and I wasn't super comfortable just openly talking about it everywhere.
Because you didn't want to end up being that door-to-door guy, like, hey, do you want to hear about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ?
Right, exactly. Well, you don't want to force this these deep conversations on people, especially when people weren't sharing them openly. Sure. So I'd basically try to feel people out and say, you might be good Summit material. And what I was looking for, people who were open to even saying the A word and talking about it. And I was trying to get people on both sides. For a long time, I think, well, Summit definitely leans toward non-believers. That's just, those are the people.
Well, I use the term token Christian because I think for a lot of the times there's ex-Christians and ex-Catholics in the room. And again, there can be a distinction there.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But we've got one guy there who's Jewish. So maybe two guys in the room out of upwards of 10. Yeah. And the well-attended summits. So it does feel a little skewed. Yeah. But I kind of like that. I feel like if I had too many people arguing my position, some of them would do it differently. And I'd look at them like, you're stop.
And a lot of people will come and not talk. They'll just listen. Now there are other people that I have to
Put them in their corner.
all right, guys, come on. You can't respond to everything. So it is sitting around. A lot of times it's either by the campfire out back, or it's now moved to my basement where it's a circular couch setting. Again, everyone has snacks and maybe a drink, and it's conversational. And we used to come up with topics and do that. Now it's a little more free form.
Yeah. It does seem to have evolved, because I remember coming in and there was more firm ground rules on specifically the topic of politics.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, over the last, probably the same amount of time, right, about the last 10 years, one thing we've seen is that the topic of politics in general has become so deeply ingrained within culture.
Yeah.
And it becomes inseparable from your worldview because of the previously referenced alliance.
Yeah.
So if you are arguing a religious standpoint, it's going to have a lot of conservative overlap. And if you happen to be arguing a non-religious standpoint, then it's probably going to have some Democrat overlap. Mm-hmm. And then you also get into the murk and the mire of just social policy, the impacts that has. And I would also argue probably during COVID, and I'm throwing a lot of things out here, but probably during COVID, we saw the politicization.
Politicizing?
I can't say the word. I'm going to just dub it over later.
There you go.
Anyway, the politicking of science.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
And
that was a big one.
That came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But because you had a cult of personality leader in office at that point in time, who's back, now all of a sudden you have folks that are putting yard signs out that say, trust the science.
Yeah. Right.
Because we don't. What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's been a really interesting, and I think that's how we lost Chad. Because he would come to Summit, and again, he did for many years, but then during COVID, was ghosted, and this probably needs to be an episode all by itself, so I can share some my feelings. But I think it got to the point where the whole science about the vaccine and whether or not it should be required, mandated, and all that, all just turned into just a hot mess of us and them, and yeah.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I think the idea of Summit was to sort of inoculate people against that mentality,
Yes.
right?
No, that's its primary focus, is that you can come in here. Okay, some ground rules, like you said. We've had people come that talk way too much, and we've had people stand up.
I was sorry. Okay.
Yes.
No.
We had people that stand up and kind of puff their chest and get real. And I was like, all right, buddy, you're not Summit material. So
Yeah.
I'm very careful of, because I send out an Evite every time, and I pick and choose the guests based on their behavior. But to your point, it was supposed to be, and I think it does, invite honest conversation where you don't have to be, afraid or embarrassed, or just give us your views and let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. Why do you think that? And we're not going to judge you for it. And I'll say, and give you a chance to respond here, I'll say probably the biggest thing that I've found that has been flawed in Summit is if people are coming to Summit and they're not honestly sharing their views, they're masquerading as somebody else or having very different views, then that person is not going to feel very welcome, because they're not honestly sharing their views. If you came in and you told me, you were Latter-day Saints or something like that, I'm going to back off on the jokes. I forget who has the magic underwear or whatever, but Mormons, maybe?
Mormons, yes.
Yeah. So, if you come in and you say you're this, no one's going to poke fun at you and make fun of you. But if we're talking about, maybe some of the sillier sides of some of the religious sex, magic underwear is a funny conversation.
It can be, yeah, unless it happens to kind of be something that you're really offended by because you are self-conscious that you have to, wear that exclusively.
Right. And if you tell us that, hey, I'm wearing my magic underwear now, we're not gonna make, that's not what Summit is.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to protect people against that if they're not honest. And I think that's what we had with Chad.
Okay. Oh, one thing I think probably was contributing to that too is there's no sources, right?
Yeah.
And so this is another one of the ground rules that maybe should be outlined. You don't have a bunch of folks that sit down with a computer in front of them or getting on their smartphone Googling confirmation bias.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a bingo game that you came up with, or like a type of game where premeditated had a bunch of words that often came up, Dunning-Kruger effect and confirmation bias.
You were there for that one?
I was.
Okay.
And so we almost poke fun just at how people debate online by invoking these things that are frequently used. Straw man was another.
Yeah.
So you have to show up with an opinion that is at least your own, or at least something that you've read well enough that you can substantiate it.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, then you don't really have a lot to say without that ability to Google your answers.
Yeah, and if I could rabbit trail for a second, I don't remember if the Summit one came first. I think it did, but I also played the same game. So to elaborate, I would write on little flashcards, keywords, phrases, whatever that people often say. Like you mentioned Dunning-Kruger and Steelman, Strawman, sample size of one, all those. Yep. Okay. So I took the same idea to the soccer field. And there are things, and this was with, really, really vocal parents. And we did the whole episode on bad parents. These are good parents. They're rooting for, you're rooting for the kids.
So this is the good hustle.
Good hustle. Accelerate was one a parent always said. And, then of course there's some critical things we'd say, like same team or
wrong side, wrong way. Wrong way.
Man on, you got to drop those kinds. So I wrote as many of those. And the idea was as soon as someone would say it, I'd hand them out. And eventually I got people kind of like competing to try to get the most, and then they were just shouting out random phrases. But yes, the spirit of what you're saying is that we were slightly poking fun at how, I guess, derivative some of these debates could be.
Yeah, and honestly, I can't lay claim to most of my ideas anyway. I don't think that there's too many thoughts that I have that are original thoughts. I made
no free will, so
piece things together. Womp womp.
I'm kidding.
There we go.
There he goes again. Hey, I'm just plugging other episodes, by the way.
You better be keeping track, because there's like 3 or 4 now that we've mentioned, and you're gonna have to link them all later. I just lost my train of thought completely.
That's my job.
You're good at it. Well, let me move down then my list here. I've made a few just crude notes as we're talking. This is a question I have not asked you before, but I have an answer to it, and I'm curious.
7.5 inches.
I told you that's a centimeter ruler. You're trying to do it again, but I've got notes. You can't get me twice.
Okay, to be fair, before we started, I mentioned that Robin Williams did that bit on some talk show.
Yeah, so that's a callback to a joke you guys didn't get the first part of. All right, Summit.
Yeah.
A lot of things are discussed, not just religion, but through those conversations, and I'm specifically Summit, has there been a time where you have ever been presented with an argument that made you change your mind? Have you ever changed your mind?
So this isn't going to be very exciting because we already know the answer, but I literally did change my mind on free will with Summit. Like I thought we had free will. I was, at least I had the illusion, I believed the illusion, and I guess I didn't think about it a whole lot. And I know I was listening to, Bad Religion has a song, No Control, that I think is about no free will. And so I've had like these kind of ideas kind of bouncing around, but it's one of those things that I didn't want to think about because it was kind of scary to think about. So
what was the fear attached to that?
Well, I think it's the classic fear of not having free will. Well, what's the point of anything? Let's all just
it deteriorates to nihilism.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course I've worked through that, but it was Summit that and I don't know if it was. I'll tell you what it was. It was listening, of course, to Sam Harris, and he wrote a book on it, and I read that, and it was in my articulating of it to others that really kind of reinforced my belief in not having free will.
So does Summit for you then function as sort of a catharsis for working through some of your thoughts, especially the scary ones?
Maybe. I am trying to think of some other things that have kind of changed, or the meter has moved. I don't know, fear of canceling ourselves here. I think there's certainly some dangers to the extreme wokeism that we've seen in the left, and
the MAGA on the right,
and the MAGA on the right.
Let's keep it.
I want to frame that
symmetric
carefully. I think one of the things we really got into with Summit was diving deep into some of the. It's pretty easy as a liberal to just kind of buy into the whole narrative, because they're all good to me. They all seem like good things, right? So it's not coming from a place of selfishness or things like that. But if you don't carefully kind of examine those, I think then you end up kind of agreeing with things that you don't necessarily agree with.
I think you can frame that on both directions, because if we go back to the previous assumption that if you're Christian, therefore you must be Republican. Yeah. Well, if you just point at a Republican agenda and you look at all of the different social points, particularly, but even some of the fiscal points, it doesn't align with the gospel. It doesn't align with the way that Christ told people to behave. So I think it is careful, or I think it's important rather to be careful that we're not so tribal that we fail to be moral agents. And I think it's very, very easy to just cheer for your team. Go team red, go team blue, and it's a shortcut. Because if we go to we've talked about system 1, system 2 thinking before, but system 1 thinking is the low calorie, easy thinking that doesn't require a lot of work, and you just abide. Whatever the position is, that must be my position, because I am, my identity is X. But to self-examine, to take the time to reflect, to challenge the status quo, and to challenge maybe the main party line, doesn't always work out. And I'll since we're getting political, even though we aim not to do that, John Fetterman has done that. And he's getting a lot of bad press. And for the first time, I'm like, oh, wow, the guy actually does have some sort of moral compass that he's going to follow. He's not just following, the whole political dialogue part and parcel.
Check boxes.
Do I agree with him? Do I disagree with him? I don't know enough about his positions to say, nor do I really want to. But I'm always impressed when somebody will depart from that tribal narrative to stand up for something that they believe in, even if it's counter to what they're supposed to.
Well, I like how you very often bring up that Richard Dawkins point there. That is, I think that's a great example of steel manning. A lot of people would just, as a Christian, they would just dismiss everything that Richard Dawkins says as evil, right? Devil's work. So I think one of the most important things about Summit is that we really get into nuance.
Yeah.
Like, we want to talk about nuance. So you can talk about abortion, either, abort at 8.5 months, or don't abort at all. There's so much nuance in there, and I don't want to get into this because that's again a whole other thing that just gets people
trying to get us canceled again.
But the important part is talking about those nuances, and you and I have even discovered that we really find out there's a lot of shared ground.
Yeah, so if you take away the extreme, the fringe, you can get to a place where maybe you don't even feel good about it.
Yeah.
But you feel like you could, you could gain ground towards what your moral objective is if you were willing to make a compromise.
Yeah.
And I think on that topic, you and I both discussed that and found that there's certain things that we're either uncertain about, and we agree we're not certain about it, or that we are certain about and that we would find ourselves in total agreement with. Yeah. And so we assume that there's this larger divide.
Yeah.
And actually, when you dial it in, and you have to assume that the other person has positive intent.
Yeah.
And this is something I think is lacking in the overall cultural dialogue that Summit gets right, is you don't assume that the other person is just an absolute idiot right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because if you assume you're arguing with an idiot, then an idiot's going to say idiotic things, and you're not going to entertain any of their positions.
That's true.
At that point, why have the conversation?
No. Yeah, and I think to your point where you're talking about, I mean, I view it as kind of zooming in a little bit. You're zoomed out. You could see those extremes. There's not a whole lot of conversation you can have there. But as you zoom in, or as I've been hearing it lately, double click.
Oh.
When you double click, which I guess is, comes from a map, double clicking a map and zooming in, you can kind of see that nuance and you can get to that.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that's important is that in an environment like that, you're not just finding ways to disagree, but you're also finding a whole lot more common ground, which most of the people that I'm social with on a regular basis are folks that disagree with me religiously and politically. And if we lived in the Facebook echo chamber world where those were the most important things and that's the only thing that we ever talked about, then I would have a completely different social circle. I wouldn't have the friends that I have, but I also have, a lot of understanding with and mutual respect for people with whom I would otherwise disagree with on some core things. Yeah. And if the stuff that I believe is important to me, then I would want to share that with people that don't have it, right? And that's the whole evangelical mindset. Yeah. And also, if I'm wrong, I'd like somebody that's, loving and intelligent to offer correction because I'm wrong a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I know several people that have come to Summit that have changed their views on death penalty.
That was me. Yeah, you're thinking of that.
Yeah, certainly. It's not the intention isn't to change minds. The intention is to open the minds and discuss them. And you're right. I don't want to be wrong any longer than I have to. Right. So if I'm wrong about something and someone comes in and clears it up, I think that's great. Yeah.
I think it also produces understanding too, because sometimes we do assign morality to certain things. And you may remember some of our earlier conversations where I would ask you a question like, how is it that somebody cannot believe in God and be a good person? Like, where does your foundation for morality come from? And so just to kind of stretch that view a little bit and say, well, there's moral frameworks that individuals can hold, and those moral frameworks still follow a set of rules. Yours may be, a theological moral framework, but you can also, you can have, and we've used words like deontological or whatever else. And so just to kind of stretch that a little bit, I think it also helps with understanding that, no, this person's not necessarily like just overall a bad person. Though my religious listeners will say, well, we're all bad people. We all sin and need the grace of Jesus Christ. Okay, yes, that's true, according to me.
Right.
And according to the Bible. But I'm talking a little more generally here than that specific.
And it's important to come at it from a different perspective. If I don't have the, I would say even the luxury of having that biblical framework to work with, I got to go a different way, and I have to come at it from like an ethical point of view. And I'm gonna get pieces from the Bible, just like I think the Bible has gotten pieces from elsewhere. But the point is that there's some path, and it might be golden rule, and it might be ethics and all things like that, and it builds a framework that is a world I'd like to live in. But
definitely. So I guess we alluded to this. I was going to just tell my change my mind story there, because I came into Summit supporting death penalty, thinking that this is some people just need to be removed from society, and I forget who it was that challenged this. It might have been Chad, but basically I was challenged with this notion of, okay, well, if you say that all people have sinned and you say that all people require grace, isn't it nice that you've already received that? And why would you take away an opportunity for somebody else to have the chance to receive that?
Yeah.
And so even though I think that, crimes against children or, homicidal maniacs should be put to death, like that satisfies something in me for justice. I'm also aware that, well, if that person has, to your point, maybe they've got bad programming, or they didn't have a choice because of something wrong with them neurologically.
Right.
Why am I advocating for them to have an unnatural lifetime cut short and denied the opportunity to have grace? And so to be morally consistent with my Christian worldview, I had to abdicate my position on the death penalty, and now I'm a reluctant opponent.
Yeah. And I think the advantage there is that someone who, if they're not killed by the death penalty, they still have access to religion. They still have access to books and things to find grace and to better themselves. Sure.
And there's probably some healing in that, you know, because if they find grace for themselves, they may extend forgiveness to other people. It might give folks that were in a position of victimhood the opportunity to have a conversation, seek understanding, also work through their own path of forgiveness. Yeah.
Now I will say there's at least one criminologist that has attended some summit, and I really wanted to dive a little deeper into the free will and the death penalty and that kind of area, because I can see one argument I can see is that a deterrence argument, right?
Sure.
Death penalty for certain things would deter others from doing it. I'm not really, I don't really have a position on that, whether that's good or bad. I'd like to know what experts think, you know, psychologists and criminologists and things, but yeah.
But you could come up with creative solutions.
Yeah. For sure.
You're going to get to live out your life to its natural end, but also for 14 hours a day, you're going to have to listen to Nickelback.
Of course.
And they'll be wishing for the death penalty on the 45th replay of, look at this photograph.
Maybe to kind of summarize, 10 years of Summit. Mostly us filthy atheists going, but practicing Jew, a Christian. We've had a lot of like spiritual folk.
Spiritual, but not religious.
Yeah, that again, and I don't know if it's a reluctance to say the A word, because again, people that haven't listened to the episode on agnostic atheist, I mean, a lot of people would come and say, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm an agnostic. I'm kind of, halfway. And, we can parse that more. But, we've had, and we're even watching someone deconstruct, right?
Sure.
Which has been interesting. And that one is really interesting because you have someone who worked in the church system in music, sure, and other things, but was, that was a person that couldn't come out as an atheist or even come out as a liberal.
Yeah.
And that's tough. So Summit gives you that place to just
sort of like a trusted circle of folks that aren't going to jeopardize your livelihood or your worldview or being.
That was probably the most interesting text message I ever received. It was a really long one by this guy I'm talking about, neighbor, friend, and he's like, man. And he's like, he saw my bumper sticker, which was
Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Maybe, yeah. And then thoughts and prayers and policy and change and all that, just to tick people off, right?
Why do you want to do that as a traffic and safety expert?
I really don't know.
Let me increase aggressive driving. We're gonna get those numbers up so I can keep my job.
I try to keep subtle, but I have been. People have like pulled over and complimented me on that sticker once.
You've never gotten your number one? No,
I haven't. So I guess I've had a few hints to this guy, and he came to me and said, "Hey man, I'd love to get coffee or something with you and just talk about it, because I'm not sure I believe anymore, and I'm really coming out of this." And I was like, "Dude, you texted the perfect person." It just so happens we have a summit coming up in a week or something. I mean, it was really close. And I was like, dude, this is a place exactly for you. And he came and he knew a few of the other people there. And boy, I'd like to talk to him, after the fact. Now I'm wondering, I mean, this was therapy for him, it was.
Yeah. Now, I do know that this individual that you're talking about has some pretty now strongly oppositional views to positions he was previously probably socially obligated to hold. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is sort of a knee-jerk reaction to a flip where all of a sudden, once you've misrepresented yourself for a while and you felt compelled to do that, but then you have your moment of transition into your new way of thinking and being, you almost have to oppose what you previously believed a little extra hard to sort of kind of account for regression?
That's really interesting because we have seen it with our friend, but one we can talk about publicly is Seth Andrews. Is and he was another one that was part of my, wanting to talk about this more. Seth Andrews hosts the Thinking Atheist podcast, and it's a fairly popular one. And he's talked very openly about how, he was right wing, conservative, evangelical Christian. He even did like Christian radio and all this, and he deconstructed, and it seemed like part of that process was to wait a second, I don't believe these political things anymore. Kind of reanalyzing them and thinking about things differently has caused him to shed those. Now, again, I think there's some conflation between kind of liberal and free-spirited or atheist or whatever you might want to call it, and then Christian conservative. And I'm not fully sure I understand. I've got some friends that are atheist, right-wing conservatives for sure, especially fiscal conservatism.
Sure,
I think that's a pretty...
Well, you've alluded to, but I think there are defined schisms in both parties. I think you've got the woke progressive left, and you've got the kind of the traditional blue blood Democrat.
Yeah,
and then I think you've got the mega ultra right, and then I think you've got the kind of the more traditional Republican. And
then throw your libertarian in there, and that could take a little bit from both sides easily, you know.
And then just leave me alone.
Just leave me alone. I don't care what you do with the private parts, but don't take my money and
stay off my private property.
Stay off my property. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting how there are different, aspects that seem to cling together, and others. And we've had some very, very confusing people on the podcast before, or in Summit before, where it's like you're atheist. You're very conservative, you're gay, you're, and you're like,
things,
how do you get
these things don't belong together?
Yeah. But I think that's good. I think Summit gives you an opportunity to share these things where, in other aspects of your life, you might not be able to, because it may be an issue with your employer or your friend circle,
or just crushing social pressure, because a lot of friend groups are structured around some of these ideas. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm all for it, and I feel like I'm still glad to have an invitation to the table, because the conversations are always phenomenal. We do get heated. For those of you who watch the podcast, there have been times where Eric and I have gone for the jugular. Yeah. And at the end of it, it's always a handshake and a hug, and like, hey, that was good. Nothing personal. Yeah. And I think that's the spirit, that if we could just take that and bottle it and then just distribute it. Yeah. I think that would be very curative for culture.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for everyone. We've had a few people we just haven't come back. They don't think they fit, and then of course it backfired apparently with Chad.
Yeah, well, hopefully those fences get mended, because he's a good dude. I like him.
Yeah. So we'll say, if you live in Lexington and you're just kind of curious and you think this might be for you,
reach out to Eric. If you don't get an invitation, that you're too extreme.
You didn't pass
Back
the
off,
test.
bucko.
We usually give everyone at least one shot.
Yeah. We've got a brand new website. What is that site?
That is soapboxlex.com.
So you can check us out on the web. You can also check us out on your favorite streaming platforms, including...
we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we're on Amazon. And of course...
if you want to check us out and actually see what you're listening to, we do have video as well on YouTube. And I don't know if you knew this, but Spotify does video too.